Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to another long-awaited episode of Brand New Gig. It's been a couple of weeks. We might discuss what have happened in the last few weeks, but until then, if you are joining us for the first time, thank you so much for coming on in the mid-weeks of December after college football is hitting its highest form. And if you're returning, I would hope that you'd be returning consecutively because, like I've said, if you don't return on a consecutive basis, we might have to be blaming this past loss on somebody who hasn't been on their regular scheduled game. But I have the honor today of welcoming our guest, who was a former Texas A&M defensive lineman from 2013 to 2014, who is now doing his own little thing at Good Will Hunting and Dave Campbell's Texas Football, who also happens to host a couple of his own podcasts. So please join me in welcoming our very own Jay Arnold. How are you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, Avery. Thank you so much for having me on. Thrilled to talk Aggie football any chance I get. So I really appreciate the opportunity and can't wait to get into this.
Yeah, we are soaking up every second we can get because, as we know, it's not very often that we get to go into the late weeks of December talking on a high note when it comes to A&M football. We've had our fair share of bowl games, which we will get into later because we know a lot of people who are celebrating their bowl game right now. But right now, we are on a really high note of potentially going on a 4-game run, and that hasn't happened to us before. So before we get into all of the high notes, this is probably the first week in a really long time that I've noticed that a lot of Aggies are feeling the battered Aggie syndrome creep back in. I think Notre Dame was the last time I really saw a lot of our fellow Aggies feel the dread that comes along with rooting for this team, which is understandable, especially after coming off of a 3-week bye. There's a lot of things that I think people are conjuring up in their heads. It's a lot of creativity has come with not having football on our screens. So I am going to consult you and what some of the people have thrown at me. So we are going to continue our off the ledge segment. It's been a couple weeks, but we have a couple things that people have pointed out that they're particularly nervous about, and this isn't going to cover all of it, but we will get into a lot of it later. So the first of these, because you're a forward defensive lineman, I feel like you can cover this best to be our first point, is our run defense has become a big concern again. I think it kind of fell under the radar a little bit mid-season, but it is creeping up again.
Yeah, and I think people that are concerned about the run defense are not necessarily being unreasonable. We saw against Texas in that last matchup. This was a Longhorn team that had struggled to run the ball all year and was able to find success against A&M. I guess if you're looking for silver lining, it's the fact that A&M is not getting blown off the ball. It's just a lack of discipline in the run fits. Guys are getting their eyes in the wrong gaps, and we see how easy it is to gash defense when that happens. With that being said, there are some things to look at. You get calmed down a little bit with a couple of weeks of preparation. You look in the film room, get coached up on that. You also look at a guy like Scooby Williams. If he's potentially back, I feel like the run fits have been better when he's in the lineup. So it's not all bad, but it's definitely something I would be concerned about if I'm a fan.
Yeah, and you brought up 2 points. One, some injuries that are lingering, and then two, the coaching standpoint, which we're going through a bit of coaching transition right now, which is not so much on A&M as it is just the college football calendar as a whole, but we will tap into that a little bit later. The second point of hopefully talking a bit of our Aggies off the ledge is our kicking. What can you say about our kicking?
Yeah, I have nothing to talk anybody off the ledge there. The kicking has not been good here at the end of the season. You have what you have at this stage. There's nobody coming back from injury. Maybe guys have had something tweaked, like maybe that's part of the reason, but uh, it's it changes the way you approach a game when you're
Mhm.
not able to trust in your kicker. I mean, I think it means A&M's going to have to be more aggressive on fourth down, going for it. But yeah, that is a huge concern for me as I look at this team and the potential to make a run in the playoff.
I were to offer a little bit of solace is that your offense knows going into at least deeper than the red zone is that they're probably in four down territory, which maybe will calm Marcel and the rest of the offense down a little bit, knowing that there's a little less pressure on your shoulder, knowing that you're probably going to have to go for it 25, 30-yard line, even, which is a lot further than most teams would have if you had a guy who could kick the ball. But I mean, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot more trust there with Randy Bond or our backup. I don't know what the situation is there. It's been back and forth all year, but until we see them on the field, we can only guess. But we'll leave that as it is right now. Our third and final point, which we'll get into a lot of things later, but our third and biggest final point is going to be Colin Klein, which Colin Klein took the job as head coach of Kansas State, which we all, I think, suspected would happen at one point or another. I think it's just the timing of it all that's leaving a lot of people a little bit concerned. So, from an offensive standpoint, which I mean, this is kind of happening on the defensive side of the ball too, which we'll get into later. But from the offensive side of the ball, because people have been kind of hot and cold on Colin Klein for the past 2 years, what do you have to offer on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast with the calendar these days. The good thing is, like, Colin Klein is still coaching with a chance to like have a great postseason performance. Obviously, there's going to be some level of distraction with taking over as a head
Yeah,
coach somewhere else, uh, but it's not often you get the chance to coach in this postseason, right? 12 teams a year make it, and very rarely do you get a chance to go back unless you're one of the programs who's been super consistent. Uh, so you look at this, and for Colin Klein, this is his chance to really put a stamp on his time at A&M, to call an efficient game plan, to probably break out some tricks. And you would think that it's been maybe not vanilla, but there's probably some things left in the bag for him to
correct.
go into, and you can't hold anything back at this point of the season. So of the 3 points brought up so far, this is the one that's kind of least concerning to me because I think Colin Klein, the competitor that he is,
Mhm.
he's going to be focused on bringing the best offensive game plan possible to Miami first, and hopefully some more games after that.
Right. And he's also going completely different conference, completely different game plan. I'm sure he's taking on a completely different role at Kansas State. So I would suspect pretty much most things he has left in the bag right now is going to be left on the table. It's kind of you can't really take it with you into the off season. So I'm kind of on the same page as you. If you are most concerned about this, I would maybe shift your focus elsewhere. But I'm sure there are more concerns than that. We will get into them as this podcast goes on. But A&M is hosting their first playoff game ever. This is their first time in the college football playoffs since they have been expanded past the BCS way before, honestly. We're not going to get into the history of it all, but we're in the 12 game playoffs. This is our first time hosting a playoff game. We all wish it was at night, tomato, tomato, whatever it is. We get a game Saturday morning, 11 a.m. We are playing Miami, which is a controversy in itself, and we can get into that later if people feel like dissecting who we should have drawn, which seed we should have been. But this is exciting in itself. The thing about Miami is, I think, in the same way that people are discounting A&M because of our last couple of games, Miami's being looked at the same way because of SMU and Louisville and the games that they had there. But they are playing their best football right now, especially Carson Beck, who did have a bit of a slump. So just coming into this game, how do you address the momentum from both sides of the ball? Both teams didn't play in their conference championship, so they're coming off a bit of a bye. A&M's coming off a loss. Miami is coming off of a pretty hot streak. They've been probably playing playoff football since SMU, knowing that they had to win every game. So, where do you see the advantage when it just comes to mentality and where they've been at the regular season?
Yeah, it's tough, right? You get into this point of the season, and uh, it's all or nothing. I think one thing for Miami, Carson Beck has experience in these type of games. right? In his time at Georgia, that's going to serve him well. Uh, A&M doesn't have that, but at the same time, I feel like, there's something to be said for like getting that loss at the very end of the season, making you a little bit hungrier. Like I feel like this is a perfect chance for A&M to really overcome that. And the mentality is going to be. I don't feel like this is a game where you're going to have an artificial chip on your shoulder. Both of these teams are going to be really fired up for it. Uh, Miami obviously coming in with some momentum the way they closed out the season. A&M doesn't necessarily have that momentum. You kind of have to rebuild it after the loss.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like having that setback almost makes you a little bit hungrier going into this postseason.
Well, and we've talked about all season the mentality that they had that they carried on from last year, knowing that they kind of went on a little bit off the roller coaster, going on that streak of losses and the potential they knew they had that they just didn't take advantage of. So carrying that mentality on top of hosting a playoff game, which Miami, I don't think has played in an environment quite like Kyle Field at all this season. That's just kind of how it goes playing in the ACC. Not to be a ACC hater or doubter, but objectively, it's just a different level of football when you come to the South. So, do you think that playing at Kyle Field is going to be an advantage? And if so, how much of an advantage is that actually going to be?
Yeah, it's a huge advantage. I mean, you look at where A&M's defense has had success. It's getting people behind the chains, able to capitalize on obvious passing downs. And when you get those pre-snap penalties that can be caused by the 12th man, right, that is a massive advantage. As far as Miami and the places they played this year, I agree with you. I don't see a stadium on that list that was up to its full potential. Like I think
Mhm.
Virginia Tech at night can be special when that team's good. Wasn't quite there. I think maybe the one game that was close in environment is probably going to be when they were at Doak earlier
Yeah.
this year to play Florida State, and Florida State was still ranked.
Mhm.
That stadium was going to be fired up for a rivalry contest. But uh, I'm obviously biased. I think Kyle Field is the best stadium in the country, the best fans, the best environment. I
You
think
and
it's
me?
going to be a huge advantage for the
Yeah.
Aggies going into this one.
And in terms of momentum, in terms of what both of these teams are coming into this game with, there are some lingering injuries on both sides, as we kind of touched on. A&M has Le'Veon Moss and Scooby Williams, who are both, again, we're not going to get the injury report until I think tomorrow at the earliest because there are different stipulations with the playoffs and what you're required to put out. But then Miami also has, I know Keontae Scott is a guy that they are relying on to come back, which is big in the secondary for them. But our injuries are, I think, a little more lingering. And I know for them, CJ Daniels, too, has been out for multiple games. So, how do you see the game shifting with or without those guys? How do you see the gameplay going? How are both of these teams prepping? I mean, you've been on the front lines of what it takes to play a college football game. So, you know better than any of us what you're kind of doing in the film room weeks leading up to those games.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and Le'Veon Moss is one you touched on. We're not sure how that's going to shake out yet. He is such a big piece of this A&M rushing offense when he's healthy, and especially against a team like Miami that is so good against the run defensively. They're really strong in their front seven. Really fun unit to watch. For me personally, like this is the type of football that I like to see. Just athletic, aggressive. I keep coming back to that Notre Dame game early in the season where
Yeah.
this Miami defense really shut down one of the best rushing attacks in the country, right? Jeremiah Love and the other guy's name slipping me, Jarian Price, I think.
Darian Price, yeah.
Yeah. Like this is a very talented Miami defensive front. You want to have a guy like Le'Veon Moss involved. And if he's not able to go, I really think A&M's going to struggle to get much going in the run game. I think they're going to basically have to turn to the short pass game as
Mhm.
a function of the running. So we'll see what happens there. Flip side of the ball, if you're looking to game plan, this is going to come down to making Carson Beck hold on to the ball a little bit longer. He has a really quick release, and when he does get the ball out quick, a guy like Malachi Tony, who is just an incredible player for the Hurricanes, very dangerous. Uh, I will say though, when Carson Beck is forced to get a little off script, that's where things get a little bit hectic for
Mhm.
the Miami offense, and that's how we saw those 2 losses occur early this year. Four interceptions for Beck against Louisville, 2 interceptions for him against SMU. If you can force Beck to hold onto the ball, if you can muddy the picture a little bit pre-snap, if you can get to him and pressure him, he can make mistakes, and that's where I see A&M possibly having success on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you're covering both sides of the ball very well, which we're gonna break down a lot, and you bring up a really good point of I think the first thing is people are forgetting that at one point in the season, Miami was touted as the best team in college football. Like, there was a few weeks where people thought that Miami was unbeatable, and no one saw a world in which Miami was not gonna be the 1 seed going to the playoffs, and then they had a bit of a skid, and then they had to play their best football the rest of the year to even be considered to be in the playoffs. So it's a bit of a skewed perspective that I think most of us are having right now looking at them just because of the way that the college football landscape played out. But we'll go point by point. I think the biggest of these that everyone is talking about is quarterback play and what that means for both teams. And what which I'm sure you've also seen is it's if it comes down to quarterbacks, it's either okay, do you get Carson Beck Virginia Tech or do you get Carson Beck SMU? Do you get Marcel Reed first half of South Carolina or Marcel Reed second half of South Carolina? But I'm wondering from your perspective, let's say both of these quarterbacks are playing B plus. They're playing average. They're not playing bad enough to where the game is on their shoulders, but neither of them are putting up Heisman worthy performances. Then what does the game come down to? Because I think if they're both playing average, it's anyone's game. It's not going to come down to mistakes or penalties. It's going to have to be someone being electric on either side of the ball.
Yeah, and it's tough to see how this game plays out because I think the quarterback play is such a key piece. I would say it comes down to the weapons around them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and again, we talked about Malachi Tony already a little bit for Miami. Uh, Super electric player, explosive, fantastic route runner. Like, this is a guy
Mm-hmm.
that I would never believe was a true freshman. Watching
Yeah.
his ability to run routes, but on the flip side, A&M I feel like has maybe a little deeper talent around Marcel Reed. Casey Concepcion, obviously, incredibly talented. Mario Craver has been a little bit quieter in the back half of the season, been a little bit banged up,
Mm-hmm.
but he still is just incredible at the yards after catch.
Mm-hmm.
Le'Veon Moss, the tight end room too. Like Nate Borkircher has been big in certain moments. Obviously, has the game-winning touchdown against Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like Malachi Tony may be the best player on the field on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, but I think A&M is just deeper as far as the weapons they have around Marcel Reed, and then I think that could be what it comes down to, especially if both defenses are limiting the players to short passes. Like, yards after catch is going to be massive, and I
Mm-hmm.
think A&M really excels at that.
And I think you've hinted at this, and I don't think it's a crazy take for me to say, but I think beginning of the year, when we had Le'Veon Moss, a guy who was like a true power back, you would say that if A&M can establish the run, then that gives Marcel the room to run the ball. That gives our weapons on the outside, our tight ends, the chance to open the field. But I think losing Le'Veon Moss and seeing a bit of shakeup on the offense, it's almost reversed. Like you said, if you open up that short pass game, then you can get the run game going, which is where we saw a big struggle for that Texas game, is that we can never really establish our receivers. And then it kind of was like a chicken and the egg type of situation with our run game. Um, so what if you were, let's say, your offensive coordinator, you're Colin Klein, Holman Wiggins, whoever's holding the clipboard for that game, which is again a question mark. What are you kind of coming out of the gate with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get the playmakers the ball. I would probably spread out Miami as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and try to get a rhythm going with some quick game, get Marcel Reed established, and again, give your guys Craver and Concepcion the chance to make guys miss and turn small gains into big gains, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something again that they excel at. And then once you get them spread out, they have to react to that. It softens up the middle a little bit, and that's when you go to the run. To your point, like kind of a reverse situation. You think about establishing the run first and then getting outside. I think A&M getting outside, getting to the receivers, allows them to then circle back to the run. And that's where you hope Le'Veon Moss is healthy, good to go, because I think it could really open up some opportunities for this Aggie offense.
And Le'Veon Moss again has been a big talking point for everyone for the past 5, 6 weeks. Coming into this week, I don't think anyone's expecting him to have a Heisman legacy game where he's getting 20, 30 touches. Is there a number or a range where you hope he can get in that would make a significant of enough impact to change the game? Like my number is around 10.
Yeah, that's about where I am. Like 8 to 10 touches, some good solid runs, just soften them up a little bit. I mean, honestly, even mix in some two back sets, right? Like
Yeah.
just get some different personnel looks out there. There's so many ways that you can open up the offense if Le'Veon Moss is able to get those 8 to 10 touches. But I think that's about where my magic number is as well.
And this is a little bit more of your forte, but this is again something that people don't talk about as much because it's not as fun to talk about. But line of scrimmage, that is where I think Miami is probably the best team we face all year, just as a unit as a whole. Both their offensive line and their defensive line is probably going to be our toughest challenge. So we'll start with their defensive line because, as we know, Ruben Bain is probably the name of their defense, just like Cassius Howell is for us. So, how do you see their defensive game plan looking? How do you see that toting up against our offensive line? What we plan to do on the offensive side of the ball? Just the momentum as a whole, and how we plan to face off against that.
Yeah, and Ruben Bain is the name there, but I feel like Miami has a really good deep unit across the board. Uh, I think it's fair to highlight Bain,
Hmm.
but they've had a lot. Like it's not like Bain is out there and he has 12 and a half sacks, right? Like he's not putting up the ridiculous numbers. Now, part of that is I think teams are compensating for him. Like I think
Hmm.
teams expect him, and they try to double him up. And part of that is the guys around Ruben Bain have done a great job of getting active and uh, contributing to that. And again, anytime you're prepping against a defensive line that is this good, uh, it's a massive challenge of how you're going to try to create some kind of momentum. A&M can't afford to be one dimensional. Like you're gonna have to figure out how to run the ball. Uh,
Yeah.
I would expect some misdirection, right?
Mhm.
I don't think you can afford to necessarily take a long developing play, but I would expect just some different looks that maybe we haven't seen to this point in the run game. Just try to mix it up. Try to create a different picture for the linebackers, and just find a way to get those gaps and hit a hole.
Well, the other side of that, our defensive line, and then also our secondary. I think one of the biggest complaints I've heard, and then also just I've seen from watching the games, is I think we have a really good defense, much better than we expected, coming off of losing a lot of guys to the NFL last year, and just the portal changes and everything we've seen from development wise. But we aren't the best at forcing turnovers. I think that's been the biggest complaint all year, both from the defensive line side of the ball and then also Des Ricks and Willie just forcing interceptions. So, do you think that is pivotal? Do you think that's something that we can get by continuing on this trend, or is it something that's going to need to change, especially because we know Carson Beck can be turnover prone,
Yeah, you don't want to sacrifice technique to try to force turnovers,
right?
but every little momentum shift is going to be so massive in this game. If A&M turns the ball over, you're going to need to get a turnover back, right? Like you have to be on equal footing. And I think it's probably likely that there are going to be turnovers in this game. So you need to be
Mhm.
able to force them, whether that's a strip sack, right? Just making sure to get the hand on the ball when the quarterback's dropping back to throw, or in the secondary, right? Just being able to take advantage of deflected passes. I feel like there's been some times where we've maybe had chances at turnovers and have dropped them, or just kind of had a bad bounce.
Mhm.
Uh, I do think that in this playoff, you are going to need turnovers to
Yeah.
advance. So we'll see if A&M's able to improve on that a little bit. Uh, I don't think it's necessarily a major flaw with this defense, but you would
Mhm.
like to see the turnover numbers be better.
Well, people love to use the turnover margin as a deciding factor of who's going to win this game. Like if I were to tell you, okay, one team had two turnovers, the other team had one, the team with two won the game, and they're going to say that that's a highlight side of the game. Do you, because these are supposedly, well, I mean, give or take, the top 12 teams in the nation. Is the turnover battle going to be a deciding factor in who wins this game, or is it just going to be on the stat sheet and teams are going to have to work around it because you are playing some of the best of the best?
Yeah, I mean, I think the turnover margin always plays a role. The flow of the game can determine how big of a role. I think in this one, the turnover margin is going to be a deciding factor.
Okay. Okay. So would you say this is could be related, could be not related? Where do you think is the biggest edge of this game? This could be either team, but where do you think is the biggest margin of skill set?
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like these teams are very equal. I don't want to say that the biggest advantage for Miami is their kicking game, because I do feel like they have a significant advantage there. Uh, I would say probably just the level of competition A&M has faced. If I had to look at an advantage,
Yeah.
I feel like that's been slightly better than Miami so far this season. Obviously, you have the one common opponent in Notre Dame. Uh, A&M played them on the road. Miami had them at home.
Hmm.
I think just being able to uh, have that game early on in the season is massive. But again, it's hard to really call that an advantage when Miami played the same team. I guess if I had to point for one position group where I think A&M has a clear advantage, I would probably point to the wide receiver room. Again, I think Malachi Tony is an incredible player, but I just think the depth for A&M at the receiver position is better.
Well, going back to our very first point of the show was our bad defense. But I think this is both sides of the ball where we are very prone to giving up explosive plays. But just based on objective statistics, we are a much better team at getting explosive plays on the offensive side of the ball. So where do you kind of see that leveling out? It's a balance, obviously. I don't think we need to rely on explosive plays, but we are better on that side of the ball. But then when you put us on defense, we are definitely more prone to giving those up. So kind of where do you see that balance?
Yeah, I mean, it's the yards after catch. I think that's gonna be a
Yeah.
key piece, for the A&M offense is, if there is one area where Miami has struggled at times, it's missing tackles. And I think, you know, this is a defense that flies around to the ball. They're going to be aggressive with their pursuit angles, and they're going to make contact. But at times, they just don't do a good job of wrapping up. That's where I see A&M being able to take advantage of this defense and get those explosive plays. Is when a guy like Casey Concepcion can make the first man miss. When Mario Craver, like he did on the sideline against Notre Dame, breaks a tackle and just keeps going. Those missed tackles could be the spot where A&M is able to take a little more advantage.
And you talked about this earlier, but Carson does come into this game with a lot more experience than Marcel Reed does. And I think the Miami unit as a whole is a bit more aged than our side of the ball. But I think the biggest factor, again, it is recency bias, but just looking at that Texas game, if we were to single those out, they played a lot of zone and we couldn't find the outside. And I think one of the biggest components of our offense is our speed. We don't have the biggest guys on our side of the field. I mean, Marcel Reed is a skinny quarterback. He's not going to run it straight up the middle and gain yards on you. Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion are not true wide receiver ones in the senses of being those big guys who can go up and just grab balls. But how big of a factor is it going to be to just spread the field? I think that's one of the biggest things that we lacked in being able to do, especially in that first half of the South Carolina game. I think a lot of the struggles we've seen is just not utilizing the entire field when it comes to our offense.
Yeah, and you talk about that first half against South Carolina. There was a number of factors, right? It felt like the decision making wasn't great from Marcel Reed. We also had some pretty bad drops. Uh,
Yeah, very characteristic from everybody.
uh, so you look at that, and being again to be able to win that chess match of getting Miami to open up the interior of their defense a little bit, you just have to be able to take advantage of the edges. And uh, one thing I'd like to see a little bit more of too is maybe Marcel's just hitting the check down, right? Like
Yeah,
you have a running back out in the flat. If he's open, just get the ball to him. You don't have to try to force it downfield every play. If you're able to just hit your outlet, get 3-4 yards, just to open it up, make it react, and then again, right? If Miami's a little over aggressive in the pursuit, you have an opportunity to break a tackle, miss attack, make a man miss, and you're rolling from there. So spreading them out is going to be key because then you can circle back to the run game and get things going on that side.
because I think the short pass game is going to act as almost like a pseudo run game for at least the first part of our offense because just the way that things have flipped. I mean, you don't have that power back. You don't have the guy that you can just stick in the game and trust to get 5 yards. Not that Ruben Owens or EJ Smith or Mari Daniels or whoever's back there, you don't trust them, but it's a different kind of trust in what kind of offense that you're going to run. So, as much as we love that, you know, go route to ABR or KC or whoever it is, the checkdowns that Marcel was hitting at the beginning of the year that we were maybe not so keen about might be the key difference now is him just not needing to hit those ESPN top 10 highlights because we don't have the run game that we want to have. Well, if again, that comes down to how much Le'Veon Moss is able to contribute to this game. But I think our offensive game plan is going to look a lot different than it has any other game.
Yeah, and I think you get into the screen game a little bit more, where we've seen some success there. You get
Mhm.
into like some of that jet motion. Like I think that's going to be a big piece of the offense, especially just trying to get guys out to the edge, to try to get it on, you know, away from the teeth of the defense. So there's a few ways to attack it, and I do have trust in Colin Klein and what game plan he's going to develop here. I think he's going to be prepared for this. The other piece of it is like you've had multiple weeks to prepare. One other advantage that I think A&M may have is in the coaching department. Uh, and this is something that I've talked about. I'm not like a Mario Cristobal hater, uh, but I have just seen so many games where the clock management has been terrible and has cost them his time at Oregon. And then obviously there was the Georgia Tech game that Miami
Everyone still
lost.
remembers that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to stick with me. I
Yeah.
just think there's some boneheaded decisions that I feel like Mike Elko doesn't really make those types of decisions. So there's another part. If you're an A&M fan looking for somewhere where A&M has an advantage, I would say the coaching department is part of that.
Well, and that's every single aspect of this game that you break down. You can go position by position, and when you compare it all, you give points to each side. Like it really is a pick 'em. Like we get 3.5 at home, but because it's at home, that really is when it is in Vegas' eyes a pick 'em. And so it is going to be those inches that are going to make or break this game. Like I don't think anyone expects this to be a blowout on either side of the ball. So there are going to be specific plays that we're going to look back on Saturday night that we can pinpoint and say that is what changed the momentum of this game. With that being said, I mean, this kind of comes down to how we expect the scoreboard to look at the end of the game. But what do you think each side of the ball, each team, I would say for Miami, I don't know what A&M is. I'm leaning one way. I want to hear your opinion, but I think Miami is relying on their defense more so than their offense to win this game. A&M is a little harder for me to pinpoint, but where are you leaning just both ways? What you kind of see the game plan looking like?
Yeah, I think Miami's going to rely on their defense. I think that's going to be the story this year. I don't believe Miami has allowed 30 points at any point this season. I would have to go back and check the schedule, but their defense has been really the key factor. For A&M, I think it's really a more balanced approach, right? Like limit big plays,
Mhm.
but you're going to need to score, I think, at least 28 to win this game. which is easier
Mhm.
said than done against a Miami defense that has been, again, very good at limiting the points scored.
Right.
It's also about finishing drives. A&M has to be able to finish drives, get points. That's part of what killed them against Texas. Not being able to finish with either a field goal or getting it into the end zone. Uh, that red zone battle is going to be massive in this one. So I think I'm looking at the A&M offense versus the Miami defense. That's going to determine how this matchup goes.
Well, this is something that got brought up a couple times because I always ask people what concerns you most going into the upcoming game. And a couple people were saying, I really want to see A&M start fast, just really get the offense rolling. But I honestly don't think that's been our MO all season. I just don't think there's been a game where we've really come out of the gate just getting the ball in the end zone like that. And I don't think that's the way Mike Elko plays football. I mean, again, he's not focused on the offensive side of the ball, but I mean, this is kind of a pseudo of the off the ledge segment of if do you think starting fast is really going to be a determining factor of this game? Like, I just don't think that's the way we play football.
Yeah, it's just not been the story for A&M all year. A&M has been a team that adjusts in the second half, and a team that finishes strong. Uh, part of why that result against Texas was so shocking was it felt like they kind of flipped the script on that, and A&M struggled in the second half. But
Mhm,
uh, I'm not super concerned if A&M doesn't start fast, just because we've seen it all year, right? You had the blocked punt on the road at Notre Dame. You have the disastrous start against South Carolina. LSU had the lead going into halftime. Uh,
mhm.
Unfortunately, it's not great for my health that I have to see A&M unable to start fast. Like, I'd rather them put a game away early, uh, but that just hasn't been the way they played. So I would love if that happened. I would love if they start fast, but that's just not the way this team functions, unfortunately.
Yeah. We talked about field goal kicking because we talked about how important red zone offense is going to be on both sides of the ball because it's very likely that field goal is going to be the last possible option. I think anything within probably 35 yards, maybe even 40, is going to be fourth down territory. Again, that's just going to change the whole script of the offense. I even during the first half of the South Carolina game, I was just like, I don't want to see our kicking unit on the field again. I would rather go for it on the on their 50-yard line, on their 40-yard line, than see our kicking team come out. And I feel like that's kind of how our offense. I feel like Marcel is going onto the field knowing he has a little bit of flexibility with what he has to do and four down instead of three down territory.
Yeah, and it also changes just how you approach it on third down, right? Like, you're not trying to get all those yards at once. If you know you're going to be going for it on that side of the field, you can have two plays in the chamber rather than just having your one and kick. Uh, the flip side of that is you would love to have those guaranteed points. You would love to be able to just walk away with three anytime you get to a certain spot on the field. Again, that's not the case. I I have no way of talking people off the ledge. Circling back to that segment, like, the kicking game is the kicking game.
Just
Yeah,
stay there. Just stay there.
it is what it is. So that is a huge concern because uh, I think Miami's been exceptional with their kicking game this year. I think you're looking at, like, if I have this right, I think Miami's missed two field goals all year. And that's not what you want to hear in a game that uh, has a 3.5 point spread.
We're going into a little bit of specifics, but I think the way a lot of people watch college football, which I think a lot of us fall victim to, is we are very adamant about watching our own teams. When it comes to everyone else in the landscape, we probably aren't as adamant about sitting down and watching 60 full minutes of every single Miami football game, just like Miami fans aren't sitting down and watching all 12 games that we're playing. And so it is a bit of recency bias and box score checking. And when the last game we played was that Texas game, it leaves a bit of maybe a false sense of hope for them, the same way that I'm sure Aggies who saw the Louisville or SMU box score feel the same way. But I've seen a few SMU or not SMU, I've seen a few Miami fans say, Texas, who didn't have a great run game, if they can run the ball up and down our throats, then why can't they do the same? I understand that perspective, so you being a defensive lineman and just understanding the defense as a whole, where are you at with that take?
I mean, I'm worried about it. I'm worried about Miami being able to run the ball. When A&M performs at their best, they're able to slow down the run. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I think Miami's offensive line is better than Texas. Uh, I don't think anybody expected Wisner to have the game that he did for Texas, and there's no
Mhm.
reason that Fletcher, one of those backs from Miami, isn't able to bust off a big game with the offensive line they have in front of them. With that being said, I do think that the extra time preparation, right, like we talk about box score watching and uh, you know not necessarily seeing the flow of the game. Like you see a team get run over for so many yards, and I think everybody's first instinct is that this team is getting blown off the ball. And again, that's not the case for A&M. It's just the fits.
Mhm.
I think guys get a little too excited. They're trying to make the big play. They get their eyes in the wrong gap for half a second, and that's when things go wrong. We had the old adage in sports that you can't lose focus at all. If you
Yeah.
think a half a second is not a long time, stick your hand on a hot stove for half a second. Tell me it's not a long time, right? That's all it takes for things to go horribly wrong. Uh, so you would hope that the big coaching aspect, and you're not going to be able to fix everything, but you would hope that the big coaching aspect was just more discipline in how you play the run. Like you want to be able to shed blocks and make plays, but the first thing is alignment, assignment, technique, and then you can go make a play. It's like I have a big concern about Miami being able to take advantage of undisciplined run fits.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I also have faith in Elko with, 3 weeks to prepare
Yeah.
to have a good look at what Miami's going to do and have his guys ready to play disciplined run defense against the Hurricanes.
Well, and you're talking about how big coaching is on both sides of the ball, and I would agree with you that we do have the coaching advantage. But again, the college football schedule is a complaint itself, and that's a whole box of worms that we probably aren't going to get into. But we have coaching changes where Colin Klein is both the offensive coordinator and the head coach at Kansas State, but also Holman Wiggins is kind of the offensive coordinator. And then Jay Bateman got hired to Kentucky, but he's still kind of the defensive coordinator. So just both sides of the ball. If you could offer a little bit of comfort, how do you see that kind of shaking out?
Yeah, look, Colin Klein's going to be calling the plays. Holman Wiggins has been the pass game coordinator, and in the meetings, he plays a big role in that. And he's probably going to have maybe a little more input than he has at this point in the season. But Colin Klein is still your play caller on offense, and then on the defensive side of the ball, like Mike Elko is the defensive coordinator, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not a shot at Jay Bateman. It's just kind of, I think Elko has taken a bigger role in the defense this year. And I think the defense has a lot of his trademarks. It's why they get so aggressive on third down. Uh, so if I'm a fan, I am not reading into the personnel changes at all. I don't think that's a factor in this. Like you have what you have.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a little bit of distraction there. I certainly would expect a little bit of distraction, especially for Colin Klein
Yeah.
taking a head coach. But I still feel like with the input you have from the staff, his focus as a play caller, uh, it's not something that I would be concerned with at this stage.
Okay. I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, especially given the level of competitor that Colin Klein is. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know the background, he was in the same Heisman race as Johnny Manziel. So I don't think a single world where he's not going to want to compete at the highest level. And for him to just totally check out in the midst of a playoff run seems totally out of character. And if that's the case, then he was probably never the guy to begin with, which is why I just don't think that's going to be a factor, a huge factor. I mean, he's going to be spending less time on the offense than he would if he wasn't the head coach at Kansas State. That's just the reality of it. But again, you said this your very first point when you were covering it and off the ledge is just that's just not going to be the biggest factor of this game. Like if you're to be worried about something, it's just not going to be what our coordinators are doing. But with that being said, again, we've covered this kind of throughout the whole podcast. We know the spread is 3.5, the over under, okay, 51.5. So score prediction, and then also just as a whole, how you kind of see this game shaking out. Like, is it more of a Notre Dame high scoring game, Auburn like in the trenches, kind of warfare, biting your fingers either way? Because I think we both agreed it's going to be a very close game, no matter how high or low the score is. So, kind of score prediction, and then also what side of the ball is going to be more dominant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle of those two. Like, I
Okay.
don't think it's going to be full Auburn. I don't think it's going to be a shootout like the Notre Dame game was either. I'm looking at like 28-27. A&M is my score
Okay.
prediction. I think it's going to be a stressful game. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think both offenses and both defenses are going to have moments. Again, I just don't think any one side is going to be too dominant just because of the amount of weapons out there.
Mhm.
I would say that it'll depend on A&M's defense really stepping up and having a better performance against the run than they've had in the past couple games. If that happens, I feel pretty confident in A&M coming out on top again. 28-27 is my prediction. I don't feel great about it. I'm
Mhm.
terrible at these prediction things.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, when it comes to defensive pressure too, I think the baseline, especially for Elko, is usually like a 4-2-5. Do you expect to see more pressure, like loading more guys in the box, man zone? Like, where are you kind of expecting us? Just because I think Carson Beck is not as shifty as some of the quarterbacks that we face, especially like guys like Taylor Green and such. But I mean, he's still one of the biggest threats. I mean, could I think he will be drafted to the NFL. So he's not a guy that you can just shift and throw off your shoulder.
Yeah, it's he's more of an old school quarterback. That's one thing too. I feel like A&M, if things get off script with Marcel Reed, you still have a chance at making a big play. If things get off script for Carson Beck, he makes mistakes. Like it's
Mhm.
just the way it goes. He makes mistakes or he throws the ball away. Uh, I think you look at the way Miami kind of play, and it's more of a ball possession game. Like it does feel like an older offense. Uh, Man, it's tough to just try to predict how this is all gonna shake out. Uh,
It's out there. It's really all come. Yeah, there's just no way.
yeah. It
But yeah, I was feeling a little more optimistic. I was thinking 27-21 was going to be my score prediction. I think it's going to be more low scoring. I mean, that's, again, we both said that's kind of middle ground. So it's just, I don't think either side of the ball is going to be totally dominant. And I don't think either team is going to run away with it at any point in the game. A lot of our SEC games have looked close, but they haven't been that close. Like Arkansas was a one score game, but there was only one possession that whole game where Arkansas could have led the game. So there's games like that where it looks a lot closer than it is. If you look at the box score of the Miami A&M game, it's going to look as close as it actually was.
Yeah. I think it's a fair assessment. I think this is I mean, it's this point of the season, right? Everybody left in this is here for a reason. A lot of talent and, a lot of you have to win a certain amount of games to get to this point. Both of these teams have won those games. So it's gonna be a tough matchup on the field.
Rolly, you're feeling a lot more optimistic than we both are, I think. You gave the 21 point kind of benchmark of if we get above 28, I think we could feel fairly confident that we win this game. 34-21 is a big margin that I just don't foresee happening, but I will have whatever you're having because I seem to be getting more and more nervous by the game. I thought that would go away. But again, going back to that Texas game, I almost feel like that's an advantage of getting that loss out of your system and having a spark of what brought you into this season is knowing what it feels like to not play your best and knowing what it feels like to not reach the potential. Even as, I mean, I'm going to, meaningless as that game is when it comes to standings and the playoffs and whatever it is, like for those guys, that was anything but meaningless. Like, you know how it is. Every single game, I don't care if it's Utah State, I don't care if it's Notre Dame. Every game is weighed the same in the sense of it's going to hurt you no matter what you do walking away from that. So just from a player's perspective, how do you think that shifts your mindset coming to this game? Because you had like 3 weeks to just linger on that. That's really all you've had.
Yeah, it's every mistake and everything that you could have done better, every job you could have performed better on the field is going to linger with you over those weeks. Uh, Now that can be a double-edged sword, right? You don't want to get to a point where you're overthinking everything,
Right.
but at the same time, it's such a great motivator. It's such a great piece of being able to light that fire when you have something and you can say, I hated that feeling. I hated walking off that field knowing that we didn't have our best performance. Uh, I wanted to spend as much time in the film room as I could anytime we had one of those moments, try to get better, try to see where I could personally improve. And I have to think that those guys, as competitive as they have been, they talked about the revenge this season, right? The Notre Dame game was a big example of that. I have to think that these guys are going to come out just fired up. I don't think they're going to be overthinking it. I think they're going to play fantastic football, and they're going to be uh, as well prepared and as motivated as any point this season.
I think especially those guys, because we have a lot of seniors, fifth years, especially in the trenches, that know this is their last game at Kyle Field. This is their last game in front of the 12th man. It really is like you can't take it with you. Like this is going to have to be everything you've got has to be left on the field. And so, yes, there is A&M is undefeated at home, which is huge. And there is a part of it of Miami's probably going to be the best team that you've played at home all year by far. They're an ACC team, but they could compete with the best of the SEC. Like they have that level of athleticism that again is being swept under the rug a little bit just because of the struggles they faced mid-season. But you have to think, at least optimistically, if you're going to drink the Kool-Aid, that knowing that so many of these guys are playing their last game at Kyle Field is going to put a little bit of spark in their tank.
Yeah, it's again. I feel like you don't need too much added motivation
Right.
with this being the playoffs, but every little bit helps. And knowing that this could be your last game, uh, and knowing that you have a chance to also extend how long you play, is a huge boost, really, to both these teams.
Are you going to be at the game or are you just going to be watching from
No,
afar?
I'm going to be watching from afar.
Okay.
I have made the executive decision after so the two games I've been to this year were Florida and South Carolina. Florida was good.
Okay.
South Carolina was a little bit stressful. I think
Yeah.
I'm better at handling the stress when I'm watching a TV.
Okay. We can live with that. We're okay. So we essentially won. We've won every game you've been to, and we've only lost one game you haven't. So it seems like the streak is still fairly well intact. That I will trust you to do what you need to do away from Kyle Field.
We haven't lost a game at home that I've watched on television, so there's that.
That's the stat. That's the only stat we needed.
There we
So
go.
we can write that. That's going to be noted. I have a question for you that's unrelated to A&M, so we can ease our nerves a little bit. Just when it comes to playoffs, this has been a big conversation because I know you're a big FCS guy, and I know you make your way around college football, not just the brand names that maybe some unnamed big college football guys are solely focused on. But the big talking point is having a G5 in the playoff. And right now we have two, which I'm sure was not in anyone's playbook. And I know especially it was not in the committee's playbook to have two G5 teams. But what I just want to hear your take on, should there be a G5 bid? Should it be an auto bid? Should G5 teams even be in the playoff at all? Like, where are you at on the spectrum of playoffs?
Yeah, I am so glad to see both Tulane and James Madison in the playoff this year. I think they earned those opportunities over the course of the season. You look at this Tulane team, who, by the way, has a win over Duke. So they do have a win over the ACC champion. You look at James Madison, who has one loss this year, a game that was tied in the fourth quarter, I believe, against Louisville.
Mhm.
Uh, and both of
Who
those
beat Miami?
exactly. And both of those teams did everything they could to make it to this point. They win their conference, uh, and they're going to the playoff. I think they have earned a spot. I think the ACC champion being Duke, obviously, I 7-5. I don't think you should be in the playoffs.
I don't think, yeah, I would hope not anyone thinks that.
Yeah, and so these talking heads, and I know you didn't want to name names,
Go
but
for it.
yeah, Joel Klatt, Paul Feinbaum, like the guys that are like the group of five shouldn't be in the playoff, and particularly Klatt calling the NCAA tournament stupid.
Oh, that's a whole nother, yeah. God.
I was like, if you're telling me that you don't remember all the huge upsets that have happened over the course of college football, like everyone remembers the Cinderella stories.
Oh, yeah.
And saying that you don't want to Cinderella, dude, like, first of all, I think that every conference champion at the FBS level should get in. I think the MAC champion should be in. I think the Sun Belt champion should be in. I think the American, the Mountain West, I think all the champions should be in. I think it should be a 16-team playoff with 10 auto bids for the conference champions, 6 at-large teams. Because I think playing for, like, winning your conference should count for something. It should count for something. Like, it's not a true playoff because this isn't like a set criteria where you earn your way in. It's an invitational. Call it what it is. And again, I think, you get away from conference championship games. You let these teams do like conferences round robin. Whoever comes out on top gets an auto bid. And again, like there's not going to be so many teams left out that could have won. Like the conferences should mean something. I think that having group of 5 teams, are they likely to win? Like, is James Madison going to beat Oregon? Is Tulane going to beat Ole Miss? Probably not. But I would still rather see them get the opportunity by virtue of winning their conference than just knocking it out for somebody below them, like, and letting Notre Dame or Texas or Vanderbilt or whoever in.
Right. Because I think a lot of the arguments that we see for G5 teams that for people that say G5 teams shouldn't be in the playoffs could almost be applied to a lot of like the 6 or above seeds that are in the SEC or ACC. Like Ole Miss doesn't have a huge shot at winning the national championship, if we're being completely honest. Like there's a huge argument that A&M should be seated above them. But there they are. They have the SEC logo next to their name. They're going to have 1,000% more likely chance to make the playoffs than a JMU or Tulane would.
Yeah, and listen, I don't even think Alabama should be in. I think Miami and Notre Dame both should have been over Bama because you have that third loss. Your form is terrible at the end of the season. And realistically, if you go to just auto bids for the champions and then the 6 additional at large, I feel like you have your champions. They've earned their way in. They've earned their way in by winning their conference championship.
Mhm.
And then you have 6 at-large teams. Not every conference champion is going to be competitive.
Mhm.
But I feel like with those conference champions plus 6 at large, you're going to assure that every team that really has a shot is in the playoff.
Well, say we don't change the way it's formatted at all, you would be hard pressed to find any fan of any team who's in the playoffs or not that doesn't have a problem with the way the committee is run right now. They gave 4 bullet points of what they are judging teams based off of, and it was very clear that they were not following those 4 bullet points. It's very clear that they are heavily relying on eye test, which is not any of those 4 bullet points. And if we decide that we want to put the 12 best teams in, it's going to be 90% eye test. Like
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to when you say the best teams, because how are you judging the best teams? I mean, strength of schedule was their number 1 component, and that clearly wasn't used considering that Ole Miss and Oregon are above A&M. Not to be a homer, but
Yeah. It's the inconsistencies. And that's why, again, I think you make conference champions auto qualifiers. And then I think you're always going to have some element of human input if you have at-large teams. And you're going to have people upset at times. But at least if you win your conference, you earn your way in. That is not something that can be disputed. Like, if you win a conference, you win a conference. Like that's not well, actually, by this metric, I think this team won their conference. No, like if you won a conference, you won a conference. So we'll see. I feel like we're probably headed for a change anyway, and I think it's going to be to shoehorn more SEC and Big Ten teams in rather than giving opportunities to teams outside of those conferences. But yeah, I could rant on this all day. I get so mad when people want to say that we don't want to see a Cinderella in college football. Like I feel like everybody who isn't rooting for one of these teams and who is just a college football fan would love to see James Madison or Tulane make a run. If my team wasn't in it, I would love to see it.
I've seen some of the best Twitter content that I've seen in my life from the JMU fan base this week. I don't know if y'all have been following. I'm sure you have, but for those of you who aren't following, that's some of the best content I've seen on my feed ever. Like I don't want to take that away. I feel like there's just so much joy, resources, parity to college football that comes with keeping G5 in the playoff, whatever that scale looks like. And if you take that away, you're just going to see less and less parity. And there's just no way to completely solve it. But at the same time, you've got to find a middle ground.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing too. Like if you want to just have like the Big Ten and the SEC separated from everybody else, like you can just go watch the NFL. Like you want a bite-sized component, like 32 teams, whatever. You don't need too many. Part of the reason college football is so special is because there are so many unique traditions and incredibly rabid fan bases all around the country, and to just cut out half of them or more than half of them because you only want the big brands and you only want the most money matchups possible. Watch the NFL.
People that are complaining about NIL and the transfer portal, people just are going to wherever they can find the biggest dollar and no one's loyal to their teams anymore. The same people who are saying, oh, we should only have so-and-so brands because they form the best ratings in the playoffs. Like, we don't want to see a blowout. It was all Power 5 teams last year, and there were 3 blowouts in the first round. Like, you can't.
You also have no idea how these things are going to go. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids. You have no idea what the motivation is going to be. Like it's just there's so much going on. Like, yeah, I don't
It's
know.
a Pandora's box. Once this NIL thing started, it was a Pandora's box. You can't close it. I mean, you can find ways to mitigate it, but at this point, I don't know what the direction of college football is headed. No one does, really.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to just like return to like 1980s college football, the FCS is right there. It's a lot of fun to watch. Let me tell you.
Well, I know you were doing your Send Jay Away campaign. Is that going to continue?
Yeah, I'll give it another shot next year.
Okay.
So I've had a lot of fun. For people who are listening who may not know what Send Jay Away is, basically I run a Twitter poll during A&M's bye week where I have people vote on a bracket of games until there's one game left, and that's the game that I attend during A&M's bye week. The first year, West Virginia won it. Second year was South Dakota School of the Mines, which is a D2 school in Rapid City, South Dakota. Last year, it was Montana State. Incredible trip up to Bozeman. By the way, hosting a semifinal matchup. It's a rivalry match, the Brawl of the Wild between Montana and Montana State for a chance to go play for the FCS National Championship. I had to get that plug in.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah, and then this year it was UTEP that won. So the Sun Bowl, which is one of the most iconic stadiums in college football, in my opinion.
And because I've been on Twitter a while, and I have not until recently been actually doing something with it. I kind of just been tweeting into the void and following all my favorite people, but I've been keeping up with FCS big time because you are a huge proponent of it. So I appreciate you being such a big advocate for it, especially in this day and age where it is getting pushed further and further under the rug. So if anyone is looking to just keep up with college football as a whole and is a big advocate against letting these big brands kind of take over, I would highly suggest keeping up with Jay and all that he's doing. But when it comes to just college football as a whole, you're on Twitter. I know you're doing podcasts. I know you also have a Substack. So kind of tell the people where they can find you on all these different platforms.
Yeah, so I do 2 college football podcasts, one Aggie War Pod with Dave Campbell's. I also do a little bit of writing work there. I do some writing for Good Bull Hunting, if you ever wanna check out my stuff there. And then the 3rd podcast or the 2nd podcast is the Get Back Coach, which is a more, national leaning college football podcast. I have the A&M perspective. My co-host is a big Penn State guy, so you get a nice balance of Big Ten and SEC, but we also talk about the FCS a little bit and about uh, the group of five. But yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Coach J Arnold. You can always check out my stuff, like I said, on Good Bull Hunting or on Apollo. If you're into some other sports besides college football, like NASCAR, MMA, I'll do some content on that over there as well.
Well, pretty much Twitter is the only place I'm really active, and you can find me here once a week. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you're watching on YouTube, hit that little subscribe button. It's really there somewhere. And if you're on Twitter, you can hop over to YouTube. It'll take you 5 seconds. You can click the button. You can click the like button too, and that would make my entire week, month, year. So I appreciate you all for watching. And Jay, I appreciate you so much for coming on. And we are going to be anxiously counting down the days until our team returns to Kyle Field for what is the last time of this season, which has been a very special season. And we are all very thankful to have been able to watch because, as far as we know, these don't come around all that often.
Nope, gotta soak it in while you can. Thanks again for having me on, Avery. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Jay, and thank you all who joined us tonight. We will see you guys Saturday at Kyle Field at 11 a.m. sharp.